This is a poem that lends itself to obvious, clear, and blatant interpretations of jealousy, or censorship, or jealousy and censorship. Instead, I would like to talk about an obscure philosophical idea. You didn't see that coming, did you? Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two different playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, now over 700 videos strong, and number two being the Robert Frost playlist. Um, the poem, I'm at the wrong place. No, I'm not. The poem in question today is known as A Minor Bird by Robert Frost, and it's kind of sing-songy. It's kind of sophomoric in its layout, in its format, but there is something real going on under the surface here. The poem itself reads as such: I have wished a bird would fly away and not sing by my house all day, have clapped my hands at him from the door when it seemed as if I could bear no more. The fault must partly have been in me. The bird was not to blame for his key, and of course there must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. This is the classic Greek battle of Galaene versus Euterpe, the most famous of Greek gods. But it is fitting that we are talking about the Greek because the idea that we will talk about is Greek. Now, first off, the thing I want to point out here: the speaker in this poem is not identified. I dropped my pen. The speaker is not identified. We are left to interpret who that speaker might be or not. There's no real reason for that speaker to be anyone except I think that the speaker must be the poet himself, Robert Frost, or a poet in general, or an artist in general, because we get this. At the end of the poem, after being a curmudgeon, after being a rank old man, after being something of a sloppy faced jerk nugget, we get the lines, the couplet, and of course there must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. I think if you are not an artist, it is more difficult to get to that conclusion than if you are. It is more difficult to find the guilt in the rest of the poem than it is if you are an artist. I would like to talk about mimesis, an ancient Greek term, is used in literary criticism and philosophy that carries a wide range of meanings, including imitatio, imitation, similarly, receptively, representation, mimicry, the act of expression, the act of resembling, and the presentation of the self. The original Greek term mimesis derives from mimesthai, to imitate, itself coming from mimos, imitator, actor. In ancient Greece, mimesis was an idea that governed the creation of works of art, in particular, with correspondence to the physical world understood as a model for beauty, truth, and the good. Plato contrasted mimesis, or imitation, with diegesis, or narrative. After Plato, the meaning of mimesis eventually shifted towards a specifically literary function in ancient Greek society. One of the best known modern studies of mimesis understood in literature is a form of realism, as a form of realism, is Eric Auerbach's mimesis the representation of reality in Western literature. It opens with a comparison between the way the world is represented in Homer's The Odyssey and the way it appears in the Bible. Very interesting ideas. In addition to Plato and Auerbach, mimesis has been theorized by thinkers as diverse as Aristotle, Philip Sidney, Jean Baudrillard, Gilles Deleuze. Anyway, so lots of people talking about mimesis. What I want to ask is, how important is it that art mimic real life? How important is it that art be translatable to the real world? How important is it that our art sees its correlative in the real world, in reality? We have here a very simple idea of a person who is trying to shoo away a bird all the livelong day, only to succeed and then feel guilty about it. This is very simple to understand, but it's also a work of art. How divorced is this piece from reality? Well, it's not. We can imagine this any day of the week. And the irony in that is the realism contributes to our feeling of it being worthy art, and the worthy art part of it contributes to our understanding of the real world. Because of this poem, we have a deeper understanding of what censorship and jealousy are. We have a deeper understanding of just what it would take for an individual to try to shoo away a bird just for singing. I mean, it's not like Robert Frost was making YouTube videos. There are a lot of meta ideas with literature. Lots of ideas of, so for example, how do you play with narratives? First-person narrative, well, there are limitations to first-person narrative. Third-person narrative, well, there's limitations to third-person narrative. But you can have a third-person narrative that is omniscient, that knows everything. You can have a first-person narrative that lies to you, an untrustworthy narrator. All of these things, actually, as unrealistic as they are, that unreliable narrator lying to you makes the story twice as fake, because the narrator is lying to the piece of paper that then you're reading. The narrator doesn't know, right? Who's that unreliable narrator trying to convince? But it makes us feel closer to the piece because the art therein is multifaceted, multivalent. Does the same thing happen when a poem is so simple? The complexity of digesting an unreliable narrator. It's pretty intense as a reader if you're just building those tools, but it brings you closer to the story. Is there something similar in poetry, in art, in writing, when the thing itself is particularly simple? This poem, very simple. Hemingway, very simple. A lot of Robert Frost poetry is very simple on the page. In that way, it mimics the real world. In its own way, something like an unreliable narrator mimics the real world as well. It makes me wonder if there is some strange middle ground that is an uncanny valley, where maybe the work is not complex enough, but it's not too simple. Is this where the world of genre fiction, for example, gets lost, does not get the accolades that it deserves, because it does not have all of the verity of the real world? But at the same time, It is not complex, is not often as complex emotionally as what is known as literary fiction, that it gets lost in the chasm between the two. Is our speaker here jealous of the bird? Is our speaker here trying to censor the bird? It's a very simple poem, but by the time we get to those questions bring up the complexity. It is something coming from outside of the poem that makes it more complex. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.